the swamp of government corruption by imposing a 5-year ban on lobbying by executive branch officials.
What happens to a nation when the first battle of the day begins before sunrise, silent, airborne, and invisible to the human eye? What does it mean when drones not patrol cars become the first responders in a conflict unfolding on American soil? At 4 a.m. in the ranchlands of Val Verde County, a formation of heat signatures flickered across a black thermal screen, moving fast, tight, and coordinated. 12 trucks, unknown cargo, unknown operators, a convoy behaving more like a military column than a smuggling run, and in that moment a question emerged. Has the United States already entered its first drone war without formally declaring one? The first event came with speed. A Texas Department of Public Safety drone captured the convoy from 9 miles south of Del Rio, triggering an immediate liftoff from a DPS helicopter equipped with the new Airborne Counter Unmanned Aircraft System ACUS, one of the most advanced detection suites now operating inside the country. At the same time, a fixed-wing National Guard drone began circling overhead, relaying live imagery to a command trailer stationed near Laughlin Air Force Base. Every feed, every radar sweep, every signal was fused into a single synchronized picture. Within minutes, the air-to-ground intercept unfolded. Troopers advanced with headlights off, guided only by GPS and the pulsing heat patterns from above. The desert lit up with aircraft rotors slicing through the darkness. 6 minutes after first contact, the convoy halted. 11 suspects were in custody. 6 migrants were rescued. Over 40 pounds of narcotics, foil-wrapped, vacuum-sealed, and hidden beneath produce crates were seized. State officials later described it as the cleanest, most coordinated drone-led intercept ever executed inside U.S. territory. Key developments emerged quickly. The codes printed on the narcotics packaging matched markings from a previous seizure in Brownsville, suggesting a larger logistics chain. Investigators confirmed that several of the trucks had been registered in other states through shell companies. And for the first time, ACUS detected multiple unauthorized drone signals attempting to observe the intercept from across the river, confirmation that cartel surveillance pilots were watching the operation in real time. According to Homeland Security assessments reported by Reuters, and the Guardian cartel drone flights along the southern border have surged to more than 300 per day. Strategically, the intercept indicated a shift. Texas was no longer dealing with isolated smuggling attempts. It was contending with transnational networks capable of coordinating convoys, drone scouts, encrypted communications, and shell company financing. The border had become a contested airspace, an arena where state law enforcement, National Guard units, and cartel drone operators competed for altitude information and advantage. Under President Donald Trump's 2025 directives expanding National Guard rapid response forces, the U.S. posture along the border increasingly resembled a hybrid defense line rather than a traditional policing zone. Human impact remained unavoidable. Migrants packed into the trucks had traveled hundreds of miles under cartel control. Troopers and pilots operating in darkness faced the rising risk of weaponized drones, an escalation documented by Deutsche Welle and Al Jazeera as explosive dropping UAVs spread through cartel factions in northern Mexico. For residents of Texas towns near the river, each night now carried a new question: what threat might emerge from the sky next? And as the sun rose over Val Verde County, one question lingered over the intercepted convoy. If this was just one run, how many more formations are already moving under the cover of night, and who will detect them first? Before the dust even settled around the halted convoy, another question cut through the command trailer like static. How did an air-land operation unfold with such precision that 12 coordinated vehicles were stopped in less time than an average 911 call? The answer lay not only in technology, but in choreography and evolving battlefield playbook that Texas law enforcement refined under the pressure of a border transformed by drones, smuggling networks, and escalating cartel tactics. The event began with overlapping assets. The DPS helicopter carrying the AQS system, its 360-degree radar sweeping for hostile UAV signatures, took the highest altitude. Below it, the National Guard's fixed-wing drone captured infrared angles and relayed them to analysts. On the ground, unmarked trooper units waited behind a locked ranch gate engine, silent lights dead. Every move depended on timing. Every response depended on air surveillance. Key developments unfolded almost instantly. As the convoy reached a paved stretch of road, troopers accelerated from 3 directions, guided only by aerial mapping. The AQS-equipped helicopter monitored not just the trucks, but the surrounding sky, scanning for cartel-operated drones, now known to fly near the border more than 60,000 times in 6 months, according to recent DHS data cited by Reuters. The risk was real. Cartel scouts often hovered just across the river, tracking U.S. movements and relaying warnings to smugglers. But on this night, no such warning arrived. The U.S. air assets moved faster. The tactical execution resembled a military intercept more than a police pursuit. The helicopter maintained overwatch, its downwash stirring red sand into spirals as troopers advanced. The fixed-wing drone fed positional updates every few seconds. Thermal imaging revealed the moment a driver attempted to flee on foot. That escape lasted only seconds. With the perimeter sealed, all 12 trucks were forced to a stop. But the strategic analysis revealed a deeper shift. Texas had effectively staged a multi-domain intercept air-ground data inside U.S. territory. Defense News and Jane's analysts have long noted that drone-integrated policing marks the next frontier of domestic security, blurring the line between law enforcement and low-intensity conflict. Operation Lone Star under Trump-era reinforcement in 2025 has expanded the integration of National Guard aviation units, giving state authorities capabilities once reserved for federal agencies or military deployments abroad. This evolution came with consequences. For troopers and aviators, the stakes had risen. Cartel factions have increasingly deployed weaponized drones, some dropping explosives in northern Mexico, as documented by BBC and Al Jazeera, raising the risk of cross-border escalation. Every aerial intercept carried the possibility that unseen hosts in the sky could retaliate. For civilians in border towns, the presence of helicopters and drones at night had become a familiar, uneasy soundtrack. Ranchers reported hearing UAVs overhead with no idea who controlled them, Texas authorities or cartel operators experimenting with new routes. Human impact was visible even in the aftermath. The rescued migrants, dehydrated and disoriented, told troopers they had been moved through a chain of safe houses controlled by handlers they never saw. Drivers in the convoy admitted to being paid only for delivery, not for resisting arrest. And yet every one of these individuals had been inserted into a coordinated system far larger than a single smuggling run. Which raised the final question: if Texas can intercept a convoy with this level of precision, how soon before cartels adapt, and what form will their next move take? At first light, the desert revealed what darkness had concealed, and the scene raised a question that echoed across every investigative team on site. If these 12 trucks were stopped, how many identical convoys had already slipped through using the same infrastructure? The answers began emerging, one crate, one compartment, one code at a time. The opening discovery came from the first truck in the line. Produce boxes perfectly ordinary on the outside were lined with heat-reflective foil, a method increasingly seen in narcotic smuggling cases flagged by U.S. Customs and documented by Reuters. Inside the second truck, troopers found something far more concerning: a welded compartment beneath the bed, large enough to store vacuum-sealed narcotics but invisible to most scans. Then came the breakthrough. The packaging carried a code stamped in deep black ink, the same code that appeared weeks earlier in a Brownsville seizure supported by National Guard drone operators. The connection was immediate. This convoy wasn't a one-off run, it was a link in a shadow logistics chain. As events unfolded, digital forensics teams went to work. GPS extractions from seized phones, mapped routes stretching across Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and even into California nodes connected by warehouses, freight lots, and produce distributors. Several trucks had registrations traced to shell companies in Nevada and Illinois, confirming what investigators had long suspected: legitimate commercial supply chains had been infiltrated. According to The Guardian's reporting on cross-border narcotics trafficking U.S. highways are now routinely used as camouflage for cartel shipments, blending illicit cargo with lawful goods. Key developments emerged rapidly: the foil, the hidden compartments, the cargo stamps, the multi-state registrations, the GPS breadcrumbs, each pointed to a distribution network designed not just for smuggling, but for scale. The narcotics discovered in Val Verde were packaged identically to loads intercepted in Otay Mesa and Laredo. Even the truck models matched. And buried in one driver's phone was a routing app modified with encrypted waypoint software similar to versions previously identified in cartel operations by DW and Jane's Defense Weekly. Strategic analysis showed the implications. The convoy was part of a system capable of moving narcotics across thousands of miles using legitimate freight routes, parallel distribution hubs, and cartel-controlled logistics managers hidden inside real companies. Operation Lone Star analysts had long warned that cartels were shifting from chaotic smuggling to streamlined supply chains, what intelligence officials describe as industrialized trafficking. The packaging codes proved it. The merging of legal and illegal trade was now seamless enough to slip past far more than state police. The human impact behind those crates, however, revealed something darker. Drivers confessed to being recruited through death threats or promises of fast cash. Migrants hidden in the trucks described being shuffled through buildings with no windows, guarded by masked men and told not to speak. One young woman, identified only as Maria by officials, said she believed she was heading to work in Houston, unaware she had been loaded into a narcotics convoy hours before sunrise. As investigators logged evidence, a larger question sharpened. If one convoy exposed a multi-state supply chain operating in plain sight, how deep does the network go? And how prepared is the United States to confront an adversary that now blends commerce, drones, and criminal logistics into one seamless threat? Before the Valverde convoy was even cleared from the roadside, another question rose from the intelligence desks. What happens when the cartels controlling ground convoys also dominate the skies above them? The answer emerged through radar sweeps, open source footage, and months of reporting from Reuters, BBC, DW, and Al Jazeera. Cartel drones were no longer tools of surveillance. They had evolved into weapons, and the battlefield above the border had become contested airspace. The opening signals appeared on AQS radar hours before dawn. Small blips, rapid movement, unidentified controllers. Texas pilots had seen this pattern before. For every DPS drone launched into the night, analysts estimated multiple cartel-operated UAVs were already airborne, hovering just across the river, tracking U.S. patrols from a safe distance. According to the Department of Homeland Security, over 60,000 cartel drone flights were detected in a 6-month window, a surge that Reuters and The Guardian confirmed as unprecedented in North America. Key developments pushed the threat from theoretical to immediate. In Michoacan, Mexican authorities reported soldiers killed by explosive-dropping drones, weaponized quadcopters modified with 3D printed release systems, a tactic documented by BBC and Al Jazeera. Footage circulated on encrypted channels showed drones gliding over convoys of cartel vehicles and releasing improvised munitions with disturbing precision. Journalists covering cartel regions began wearing ballistic vests after experiencing close-range drone flyovers. If the tactic could target rival factions, analysts warned it could target law enforcement next. This shift forced a strategic reassessment on both sides of the border. Texas officials recognized that every intercept now carried a dual mission: stop threats on the ground and survive surveillance or attack from above. DPS flight officers trained in scenarios where hostile drones entered their airspace mid-mission. Their objective wasn't destruction, but triangulation. Identify the controller handoff coordinates to ground teams and disrupt the network without provoking escalation. Defense News and Janes highlighted Texas as a test case for domestic counter-drone doctrine, a model increasingly studied by states facing rising unmanned threats. The cartels, meanwhile, adapted faster than many expected. When migrant smuggling profits dropped sharply over 70% according to DHS data, UAV operations expanded. Where safe houses once held migrants, new launch pads now lined the riverbanks. Flat concrete squares hidden behind warehouses became drone staging sites. A single $3,000 quadcopter could deliver $500,000 in narcotics. If lost, it was a business expense. If successful, it doubled its investment in minutes. Human impact grew heavier by the month. Residents on both sides of the border reported drones buzzing above homes at night with no way to distinguish who controlled them. Ranchers in Texas claimed they heard UAVs hovering over pastures hours before sunrise. Migrants described drones tracking their groups through brushland, illuminating their path for cartel scouts. Troopers feared the day when a weaponized drone might cross the border even unintentionally, which led to a final question that spread from command posts to congressional hearings. If cartels already control parts of the sky in northern Mexico, how long before they challenge American airspace directly, and what would that confrontation look like for the people living beneath it? As investigators traced the convoy's routes and analysts mapped cartel drone patterns, a deeper question surfaced, one that cut through every tactical debate and political speech. What force is powerful enough to turn the border into a drone battlefield? The answer was neither ideology nor chaos. It was profit. Cold, calculated, industrial-scale profit. The opening reality became clear the moment narcotics from the Val Verde convoy were weighed. 40 pounds of synthetic powder. On the street, according to data cited by Reuters and The Guardian, each pound could be worth up to $1.5 million depending on purity and distribution. Multiplied across just one convoy, the numbers became staggering. But Operation Lone Star's cumulative seizure figures painted an even darker picture. Over 544 million lethal doses intercepted. Since the mission began, enough to kill every person in the United States and Mexico combined. Key developments across 2024 and 2025 reshaped the cartel economy when migrant smuggling revenue collapsed by more than 70% as DHS and BBC reporting confirmed the cartels adapted. Human cargo no longer provided the billions it once did, so they replaced human guides with drone pilots. They replaced safe houses with UAV launch pads. They replaced long foot caravans with short-range unmanned drops. A $3,000 drone could carry narcotics worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. If shot down, it costs less than a single vehicle tire on a traditional smuggling truck. If it landed, profits doubled instantly. The strategic analysis revealed something even more concerning. Cartels were no longer operating as loose criminal syndicates. They were functioning as integrated logistics corporations, shadow supply chains parallel to legitimate commerce. DW and Jane's analysts have warned repeatedly that narcotics distribution now mirrors commercial freight operations using identical structures, warehouse clusters, regional distributors, multi-state trucking routes, and encrypted scheduling. The evidence from the Val Verde convoy confirmed that this transformation had reached U.S. soil. Financial intelligence units traced profits not to dusty safe houses, but to bank accounts in Houston, McAllen, Phoenix, and Los Angeles. Money moved through medical suppliers, construction import firms, and even real estate LLCs, clean fronts masking dirty transactions. Shell companies purchased trucks. Shell logistics firms registered them. Shell distributors routed them. The same infrastructure delivering produce to grocery stores could deliver narcotics to urban hubs without raising suspicion. Investigators at the NIFC Fusion Cell referred to it as shadow logistics, a term now cited by multiple Guardian and Reuters analyses documenting how cartel profits quietly flow into U.S. corporate structures. Yet the human impact remained the most haunting dimension. Recruited drivers confessed to debts they could never repay, trapped in cycles of coercion. Migrants caught in the convoy believed they were headed toward employment only to find themselves surrounded by armed guards and UAV surveillance teams. Families in border towns described sleepless nights listening to drones overhead, unsure if they belonged to Texas authorities or cartel scouts mapping future routes. This profit engine spanning drones, convoys, shell companies, and financial webs drives the conflict forward. It fuels the air war fund's new tactics and pressures law enforcement to escalate defenses. And it raises one final question with national implications. If cartels have built a parallel economy stretching from Mexico to US cities, how far must America go to dismantle it, and what freedoms might be challenged in the process? As the Val Verde investigation expanded and intelligence units connected the final dots of the convoy network, one question anchored every briefing from Austin to Washington. If the cartels are evolving faster than ever, can Texas and the United States evolve even faster? The answer emerged through a series of rapid developments that reshaped border security in 2025, marking a turning point in America's unmanned defense posture under President Donald Trump. The opening scene unfolded inside the Operation Lone Star Fusion Cell, a dimly lit room filled with radar displays, frequency charts, and live drone feeds. Analysts built what they called the Drone Signature Watch List, a constantly updated database of every UAV signal detected near the border. Each ping carried a unique fingerprint control frequency, altitude, pattern, origin coordinates. Those readings fed directly into the Airborne Counter Unmanned Aircraft System, or ACUS, mounted on Texas DPS helicopters. What began as a prototype now became a cornerstone of state defense doctrine. Key developments followed fast. 2 more helicopters were queued for ACUS retrofits, expanding coverage across South Texas. Trump's Pentagon, responding to rising drone threats highlighted by Reuters and Defense News, ordered the creation of quick reaction forces, up to 500 National Guard soldiers per state, trained specifically for drone and convoy interdiction. Texas already months ahead integrated these units into Operation Lone Star, giving the state one of the most advanced counter-drone systems in the country. State lawmakers pushed for federal recognition of counter-UAV authority, arguing that Texas must neutralize hostile drones before they cross U.S. airspace. But strategic analysis revealed a chessboard more complex than technology alone. For every defensive upgrade, cartels responded with an adaptation. When cameras on border fencing were reinforced, cartel scouts stole them. When power lines were buried, they cut them. When sensors were hardened, they spoofed them using cheap drones emitting false heat signatures. Al Jazeera and DW reported similar tactics in cartel-dominated regions of Mexico, where organizations use electronic warfare tools normally found in military arsenals. Texas countered with layered surveillance thermal drones, acoustic sensors, radar masts, and encrypted communication channels linking troopers to airborne units. Operation Lone Star expanded to cover more than 1 to 200 miles of borderland, fusing state police, National Guard aviation teams, and intelligence cells into one coordinated network. Defense analysts compared the system to early missile defense grids, always watching, always tracking, always learning. Human impact lay at the center of this transformation. Troopers now flew missions, knowing that a hostile drone could appear without warning. Residents living along the river heard aircraft overhead, nightly their routines shaped by the invisible tug-of-war occurring above. Migrants fleeing violence walked into regions where cartel drones tracked their movement like prey, and communities across Texas grappled with the growing tension between enhanced security and the freedom of daily life, between the right to safety and the fear of becoming part of an endless surveillance grid. The border, once defined by fences and checkpoints, was now defined by altitude radar waves and airborne strategy. Technology reshaped not only how threats were intercepted, but how people felt moved and lived under a sky where both sides competed for dominance. And as the United States fortified its defenses, one question remained suspended above the desert, unanswered and urgent. If the air war is only beginning, what future will the next generation inherit, one of protection or one of perpetual surveillance? At 4 a.m., long before dawn touched the Texas border, a silent formation appeared on thermal screens, 12 unknown trucks racing north in total darkness. But something else was moving. 2 cartel drones circling overhead, like predators mapping every step of American law enforcement. That night, Texas officials realized the truth: they weren't just chasing smugglers, they were entering a drone battlefield. In a stunning 6-minute operation, state troopers, National Guard pilots, and counter UAV systems collided with a convoy so organized it looked more like a military mission than a smuggling run. What they found inside those trucks exposed a system far bigger, far richer, and far more dangerous than anyone expected.